Hello, welcome to our Melamani video. My name is Tracy Richardson. I'm the harpsichordist in Melamani.
And I'm Kim Rayleigh, the flutist for Melamani, and we are both very excited to join Bonnie McAlvin and have a
Happy to be here.
great.
Bonnie is a composer, of course, and she has composed a special piece for Melamani. The premiere was March 2017, and it's called Sandstone Peak. And Bonnie, I wonder if you would tell us why it's called Sandstone Peak.
Sure. When I started to write the piece, I was planning to go to Los Angeles. Is that noise really bad?
It's funny.
Can you hear? Does it sound like?
It sounded like a door creaking.
Okay. All right. Yes. So when I began writing the piece, I was planning to go to Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Film Festival. Because the film that I had scored would be premiering there. So I researched the area, and I like to go hiking when I'm traveling. So I went to, Google and looked up mountains, and I had this thought in my mind about this piece, and I found Sandstone Peak, and the name Sandstone appealed to me. I mean, I do like sandstone as a stone, but the two words separate, sand, stone, was what was really deeply appealing to me at the time, because I was going through kind of a betrayal sort of situation, and so I was thinking stone turning to sand. So there's something that you're aiming for that's solid, that you're gonna try to achieve, and then it just disappears underneath your fingers. So I thought, this is the mountain I think I'm just gonna hike, and so that's how I ended up going there.
And where is it located? Where is Sandstone Peak located?
It's in the Santa Monica Mountains in California.
Yes. And what does it look like?
Oh, it's different from any mountain that I had ever climbed. I guess the mountains in the east coast have way more trees. Trees over your head, this dense canopy. So this mountain was very open, very scary, because there's nothing to hold on to. We're on the side of a mountain. It was really very, very different and more desert-like.
And you hiked all the way to the top.
I did. Well, I tried to go to the top. All right, so I went around, and there's a long way and a short way, and I followed the long way at first, not knowing the short way existed. A ways through, maybe 60% through, I was really scared. I was just very scared. There's nothing to hold on to, and I was on the side of the only path was this skinny, and I would have had to it was just a little too much for me. So I was like, all right, I have to go back. So I went back. But when I got closer to the parking lot, I realized, oh, there's this other trail here. So I followed the shorter trail. It was actually quite close from there. So I was able to see the top anyway.
Boy, that sounds exciting. Well, as we know, and our listeners will know soon, Sandstone Peak, the piece that you wrote for Melamani, has 4 movements, and each movement has a very evocative title. And it would be wonderful for you to share your thoughts about how those titles came to be and your inspiration.
Sure. I think that each of the movements is kind of a commentary on the idea of erosion. So the first movement is called illusion, and I guess that was me setting up this idea that we can see a goal, we can see something we want, and it may appear permanent and reachable, but it could disappear any moment. And so that first movement is more of a negative kind of stance on erosion.
Mm-hmm.
The second movement is called conversation, and that's the opposite. It's more of a positive view of what erosion is, because when you have a conversation with other people, parts of you come off and change also. So it's a two-way exchange in a really good conversation. You're growing, the other people are growing. So we are losing stuff. We're changing our mind when we have conversation. But we're also gaining. So that's the second movement. And the music is much more comforting generally in the second movement than the other movements. The third movement is called Throne of Sand. And in that case, that's literally the throne would be this goal, this imaginary goal that we want to reach for. And then we find out it's made of sand. The music is very ironic. Also, definitely was colored by political events at the time of its composition. So ironic. There's definitely some anger in there in that music that's very much hidden beneath the notes. And then the fourth movement is again, so then the fourth movement is another positive stance on the idea of erosion. So it's kind of like a checkerboard, the illusion, conversation, throne of sand, and then the fourth movement is again a positive, like the conversation, second movement. So the second and the fourth. So the fourth is more about a sense of feeling exaltation, and there's a really vivid feeling of, I guess, climbing is actually really represented actually in this movement. And there are also many particles. It's fugue. There's a lot of fugue in the fourth movement. So there's there's a subject and a counter subject, and they all wrestle with one another the way a fugue does. And it culminates in a really, really strong climbing motive. And so that movement is called Everywhere at Once. And so that is more thinking, I was really, really inspired by the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So the idea of being everywhere at once is a way of understanding erosion, again, in a positive light, that we are going to lose. We're going to lose things. We'll lose people. We'll lose positions and status. And we can feel sad about it. But if you can imagine that all of these things are actually everywhere at once, yes, we can get beyond the grief.
Thank you. That is very interesting, and it gives us a lot of additional insight into your gorgeous, beautiful piece. Today in our video, we're going to play for you the first half of the second movement, Conversation, and it's very beautiful. And in it, you're going to hear a beautiful glissando, by half steps. That's what a glissando is. Or, if you're doing a glissando on the piano, you just take your hand and go ring, over the white keys. Well, anyway, this glissando is started by the cello in his high range, but he goes up, 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 and then the harpsichord, and that's me, gets to take it up and take it even higher and finish. It just goes up into the air. That's at least the way I experience it. And do you think there's anything to my feeling that things are going up in the air, maybe sand?
Absolutely. That is a metaphor for erosion.
Yes.
A particle, it's rising, and then when it switches into the harpsichord, it flakes off.
It does. Yeah, it's very good. I can when I'm playing the piece, I can't wait to get to that part. And we get to do it several times during the course of the piece. And because certain elements of your piece, something will begin in the first movement or the second, and then sometimes they recur through the other movements too. So they're always interacting. Beautiful.
Well, I was wondering about just the compositional process, really, and organizing your thoughts for an ensemble such as ours, a rather diverse, for at least a modern piece, a collection of instruments with flute, violin, cello, gamba, and harpsichord. Not so unusual with our Telemann Paris quartets, but certainly in the 20th century idiom. And I wonder if you could speak to us about any insights you have about that, or challenges in writing for that combination of instruments?
Sure. I mean, the first challenge is that I don't really know. I didn't at that point know very much about the gamba or the harpsichord. I hadn't actually felt how it feels to play those instruments, or I don't even know if I had heard them in a concert, like live. So there's a lot of knowledge that I had to gain by research and imagining what does it feel like to go like this on a gamba. I don't know. I had to figure a lot of things out in my imagination. So although I did have access to a harpsichord, so I was able to try things out on a harpsichord. Um, I would say that and then so there's technical knowledge that I had to gain, but also information about how to balance the instruments was really, really important. When I went to the concert, after I found out I would be writing for Melamini, I went to see a concert to hear you play, and it was great. And I had the opportunity to hear, how do these instruments interact as a group? Because I guess at first I was thinking that the harpsichord would function like a piano. But one of the most important things I learned at that concert was that no, the harpsichord is not functioning like a piano in the group. This is a different timbre, a different articulation. Everything is really, really different. So whatever I use the piano for usually in my pieces, I could not use the harpsichord for that function. I had to navigate a way through the orchestration so that the instruments were used nicely and their best qualities were brought out and connected with one another.
Yes, and I think you achieved that. A lot of composers who've written for us say just this about the harpsichord, because everyone has written, well, pretty much a lot of composers have written for the piano, but maybe not the harpsichord, and so there is some experience, and a lot of you composers have said this. There is some experience and wisdom that you have to gain. You did a beautiful job. You use the harpsichord as sometimes just part of the orchestration, and you wouldn't necessarily do that, but you do, so that it combines in certain ways to give, I don't know, the cello a different flavor. And sometimes I'm on my own playing something wild and very modern sounding, and thank you for that. Very difficult. I had to practice. When you hear a piece for the first time, this one or another, let's stick to this one in March 2017. Were you surprised at what it sounded like, or did you really know?
I usually kind of know some things, but I'm surprised by others. There were definitely some surprises.
Yes.
Balance was a surprise. Wasn't sure what would come out over the other, what kind of texture would actually happen, because I'm hearing this stuff all for the first time.
You are.
In the air, yes. Which is different. I'm always extremely nervous when I hear music for the first time. Very nervous. And in fact, when I play my own music in public, it's not a good, fun day. It's
Yes.
I'm overwhelmed by a lot of pressure that this piece has to sound good, and
I do.
Personal stake in it, yeah. And I would imagine too, as a composer, not being one myself, it's kind of handing over your baby to another person to care for and treat in a respectful and in a way in which you envision, and I think that's the challenge for us, is to be respectful, as performers of what is on the page, and ensuring we're trying to bring out the intention of the composer. I think that's one of the things with our ensemble particularly, that's so intriguing and really wonderful experience to have this kind of collaboration and be actually able to talk to the composer and say, well, what do you think here? So many times our interpretation might not follow the intention of the music. So to have that dialogue back and forth and interplay, I think we're truly fortunate to have that opportunity to speak with you.
I agree. I mean, I enjoyed that aspect of this experience very much. I feel like the piece grew tremendously in the second revision after having like spoken with everybody and heard the music come out of the instruments. The piece kind of found its own way eventually and guided me toward a lot of the decisions that I am actually very happy with. And that's because we had the opportunity to go back and forth and revise things.
Yeah, yeah.
I really respect you for having that kind of frame of mind that will allow you to, you know, have the conversation that and then to name a movement after it.
Well, I have a question for you. Others may not know this watching this video, but I happen to know you're also a fabulous flutist in addition to being a wonderful composer, and also know that you're particularly interested in multiphonics, which inspires me greatly. And I thought it would be wonderful if you could talk to us about well, maybe just defining what a multiphonic is for a flute and what you've done, which I think is just extraordinary, the pieces that you've written using that technique.
Sure. So a multiphonic is kind of like a double stop. So when a violinist plays two notes at the same time, they're literally bowing two strings. So two pitches will sound in the air. It's more complicated for flute because we don't have strings. We don't have two separate strings. We have a tube full of air. And so the way that you move your fingers changes how long the tube is. If you close a lot of keys, it's a long tube. If you have only a couple of keys closed, then it's a short tube. So this is a high note, this is a low note, or a little higher and then a little lower. So it's possible to have fingerings that have a long tube and a short tube possible at the same time. And so when you blow, it can vacillate very quickly between two different pitches. And so that is what a multiphonic is. It's a really, really fine control of time and blowing so that two sounds actually sound like they're happening
At the same time.
And if we go to your website, which I have done, we can see all kinds of videos about multiphonics and hear them. So I would urge our listeners to do just that, to go to the Bonnie McAlvin website and for more than the short explanation. And what are you working on now? What pieces are you working on now, compositionally?
Well, we're all quarantined. So one of the projects that I just finished was a piece. It was supposed to be premiered in April, but it was canceled because everything
Was
canceled. So this was a very big piece for choir, children's choir, solo, soprano, cello, flute, and harp, and piano. It's very big. What we did, the person who commissioned it for the 25th anniversary of their temple. And they really, really wanted this piece to happen. They felt the world needs this message because it is about compassion and inviting compassion and allowing ourselves to feel it, even though sometimes we worry that we're going to lose something material if we share compassion for another person. It's an invitation to continue feeling it, even though we're afraid of this. So that's the piece, what it's about, and the person who commissioned it really, really wanted it to happen. So everybody recorded the piece in their living rooms. I mean, a choir, a children's choir, everybody recorded, and then we put it all together into a video. So that was the most recent thing happening. Right now, I'm just working on a solo piece for flute.
very good. Thank you. And Bonnie's piece, Sandstone Peak, along with 4 other pieces, are going to be all together in Meilmani's one of our 3 new CDs that are coming out. And you're going to be on the album whose title is Ultraviolet. Well, thank you for talking with us today. And it's really just great to see you and to hear your voice again. And I enjoy listening to Sandstone Peak very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great to see you, Bonnie.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.